to have the Middle East Report on American Family Radio, which can be heard in the Saturdays. Thank you so much for your love for the land of Israel and your love for the Jewish people and allowing me to do what I do here.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Take care. Safe travels. And we will definitely continue to pray for you while you're over there.
Thank you, guys. God bless you from the land of Israel.
Okay.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to say thank you for having an AFN Israel bureau now run by John, because we've aired a couple of his pieces and we'll have more of it on the radio and in print.
Well, I think the fact that American Family Association and American Family Radio have been so supportive of the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. And John he's got family there. He has all sorts of connections, and God has given him favor in the eyes of many of these people. These kinds of interviews are priceless in terms of getting a truer picture of what is happening in that country. You can't always rely on the CNNs of this world
Correct.
to cover this issue from obviously from a Christian perspective, but even from a fair perspective politically. This is terrible what the Biden administration has done, and I have no problem saying that the far leftists that appear to be running the show in Washington D.C. in terms of the Biden administration, they are all kinds of wicked.
They are.
This is wicked what they're doing.
It is. It is, and it's an election year tactic. They're trying to make sure that states like Michigan or Minnesota continue to vote for Joe Biden in this presidential election. If you are curious, I'm looking at Pew Research Center data here. There's far more Jews in the United States than there are Muslims. For example, according to Pew, there's about 8 million Jews in the United States compared to 3.45 million Muslims. Not all Jews do side with Israel in these things, but it gives you an idea of how many voters they could reach by continuing to stand with Israel, which, to your point, they did do early on, and now they've since kind of backtracked.
Well, this could get scary if the United States surely they will not cut off the sending of weapons and aid to Israel. If the U.S. were to do that, or to pull its carrier fleets out of the Mediterranean, for example, that would green light countries like Syria, Iran, to widen the war against Israel. We kind of are thinking we're out of the woods in terms of the powder keg that is the Middle East. But if the United States isn't careful, they're gonna signal Israel's enemies that America's withdrawing its support, and that could start World War III.
Yeah, I went to a worship service back in the late fall, maybe early winter, in which the pastor had preached all the biblical reasons why we can and should stand for Israel. And it goes all the way back to Genesis. So I would imagine we'll probably hear news reports or perhaps even calls from pastors in these next few days on why we should do that.
Let me tell you why. It's always helpful to understand how the other side thinks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's two things going on here. By the other side, I'm talking about those who oppose Israel. In this case, the United Nations with Security Council, which is China, Russia, U.S. Is it Great Britain?
Great Britain, France.
Who's the fifth one?
Germany, I think, is on.
Is there?
I'll look
five? I thought there was only 5 members of the Security Council.
There's permanent members and
yes.
then there's temporary
rotating.
Right.
Okay, the 5 permanent members.
I got them.
Go.
China, France, Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The 10 permanent members elected for the 2-year terms by the General Assembly, Algeria and Ecuador.
France and Germany aren't on the Security Council?
I'm looking at the current members from the UN Security Council's website.
The main players here are the 5 permanent UN Security Council.
Oh, I got you here. Yes.
Okay. Yes, but okay. So, because
I'll post a link.
These are the most powerful countries on earth: China, Russia, the U.S. What's the other 2?
France and the U.K.
France and the U.K. Okay. So, all right. Now, the nefarious reason for being opposed to Israel and motive is the people who hate the Jews, such as the Iranians, the Iranian mullahs.
Mhm.
Not all Iranians hate Jews, but the Iranian mullahs, the leadership there, much of the Arab world and the Persian world, they teach hatred for Jews to their children. I mean, it's ingrained. I mean, it's part of the Islamic, basically, teaching. Am I right, Ed?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the most nefarious reason why the world would condemn the Jews in Israel and be opposed to Israel. Almost doesn't matter right or wrong. Okay. The other reason for being opposed to Israel at this point is more of, and I'm putting this in quotations, legitimate reasons for opposing Israel's planned military actions in, is it the town called Rafah?
Rafah.
Okay, listen, Rafah is on the Egyptian border. Okay, a lot of people, like hundreds of thousands, if not a million, I don't know how many people exactly, they have been displaced. They're the Arab Palestinians who lived in northern Gaza, where the Israeli military action started. Okay, when you have a war, you have a war zone, people flee, right? You get out with your children and your family and your elderly, whatever. You leave. You can't stay where bombing and fighting is going on, so you naturally leave. Okay, so many of these people now have been pressed down into the southern part of the Gaza Strip near the Egyptian border, and so they're all condensed down there, a lot of these refugees. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
That is a true statement. However, so Israel's now faced with the decision. They've cleaned out most of Gaza. They boiled it down to this town, this area called Rafah, where all these refugees are condensed into an area. All right, now Israel has to make the decision now. How far do we go with our military operations in the middle of all these civilians? Okay? Now, you might say, well, these civilians are part of Palestinians who are part of Hamas, so therefore they're collateral damage, they're fair game. Fair game is not the way to put it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In other words, Israel might say, well, I'm sorry these people are in the way, but we got to go after the bad guys because they're still in existence in this area. Israel has done a devastating job to delivered a devastating blow to Hamas over the last year or so, going in to their blasting these tunnels out. I mean, they've done that, but now it comes down to do we go in, and how much do we go in? Israel's also putting their own people in danger, and how do you fire missiles in there and kill a lot of people in the attempt of going after 4 Hamas people? You know what I'm saying? This is the situation that Israel faces now. And again, go back to what I said was, I can understand where people would say, and I know many listeners may disagree with me on this, but I can understand where people might say, listen, you got to stop right here. You can't be just bombing into a place where you've got all these refugees and these million people condensed into this one. It's going to be so many innocent people are going to die. It's going to be, and they're going to be starved to death, or I don't know. You see what I'm saying? So that's what people would be opposed to. That's why people would say Israel needs to stop right now. Otherwise, what I've just described is going to happen. Is that a fair analysis?
Yeah, that's part of it. But the part of it is, of course, in Israel's perspective is we got to finish Hamas off.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
But part of it is motivated by hatred towards Israel. The U.S. had vetoed resolutions calling for a ceasefire. Last week it said, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will put forward a resolution for a ceasefire tied to the release of hostages, and China and Russia vetoed that.
Okay, you got to have that.
Yeah, so
You got to have they got to release the hostages if you want any chance of a ceasefire.
that's just antagonism and
Hamas.
hostility towards Israel.
yes, and you got a lot of that.
And you got a lot of that.
We can maybe talk about that more later on another program. The biblical reasons why the world hates the Jews.
Right. And it's spiritual.
Yeah, at its core.
Right.
All right, we hope that you have a uneventful weather day wherever you
Yes.
may be living.
Especially at my house.
It's right. Look out for number one, right, Ed? We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Spiritual Heritage Tours with AF